Hi guys, and thank you for joining. This is the fourth video in the Yoga Sissel series for beginners. In the sequence today, we're going to be playing around with our balance, the challenge of standing on one leg. And usually it is the more challenging part of the practice. But it's also a really great opportunity for building your sense of awareness and training your mind to focus, because when you're standing on one leg, you can't think of very much else. Otherwise, you'll lean over. We'll be looking at 3 of the more common balancing postures, and I'll show you some variations. So let's get started. See you on the mat. So we're starting in our Tadasana for this video. In your Tadasana, your mountain pose might be feet together or feet hip distance. And we're going to be working through our balancing postures. So you might like to have a block nearby to help you bring the floor a little bit closer and to help give you a little bit better balance. So I'm starting with my feet hip distance. And our legs are nice and strong. Our knees are a little bit bent, so as if they're trying to bend and straighten at the same time. Our buttocks are toning, open the front of the hips. The spine is long. The rib cage lifts up. And we're going to start with a salute, sweeping the hands all the way up. And tucking the chin, curling down along the spine, bending the spine, the hips. Fingers to floor, head to knee. Eyes forward, heart forward. And curling in. Head to knee. Firming your buttocks, rolling up, back up along the spine. Reach up. And we're going to continue down once more. Curling all the way. The spine, the hips, bending. Fingers to floor, head to knee. Eyes forward, heart forward, and curling the head in. Now keeping your heels on the floor, bend your knees as low as they go, and uncurl yourself into your chair pose. Good. Bring your hands to your heart. So it's a short squat Utkatasana, chair pose. And we're going to start by straightening the left leg, bring the right knee to your chest, sweeping the hands up, lift your right knee as high as you can. As you bring your hands to your heart, you're going to place the right foot back down into your squat. Squeezing into your buttocks, straightening the right leg, left knee lifts up high, hands back to your heart, foot on the floor. One more time. Stretch up, knee lift up high, and down. And all the way up. And down. And this time, coming all the way up. Right knee to chest. Then bring your hands together at your chest. Keeping your hips still, your shoulders still, only turning your right knee out to the side. Noticing the angle that it turns to. Bring the knee back. Foot to floor. Chair pose. And coming up. Left knee to chest. Hands to heart. And keeping your hips forward, shoulders forward, only turning the left knee. And bring the leg back to center. Knee to floor. Chair pose. Squeezing your butt. Come all the way up to standing. And curling down. Fingers to floor, head to knee. Heart forward, gazing forward. Curling in. Squeezing into your buttocks, rolling all the way up. Saluting the sun. Maybe the palms touch. And the arms along your side. Good. Now bring your hands to your hips. So your hands are going to hold your hips in place. Means your pelvis is going to face forward. Lift onto the right tiptoes. And turn your right knee out. Notice if you've collapsed into your hip. You might be sticking your butt out to the side. The right hip might have dropped. Left hip given up. And you might even have turned yourself to the side. So we want to straighten that up. Which means hands on the hips. Engaging the entire left leg, the outside of the leg, the front of the leg, the back of the leg, the inner leg. Keeping that leg nice and strong as you come up onto the right tiptoes. Keeping the left leg nice and strong, turning on your right big toe, Knee points out to the side. And remember, it's that angle of our knee without turning at the pelvis. And you might stay here, and this might be your tree pose. From here, you might like to move on, which means keeping your pelvis still facing forward, hips don't move, the knees staying at this angle, but then you might take your foot to the inside of your shin. Keeping the left leg nice and strong. And you might even feel tiny little wobbles as your muscles work to keep you balanced. And then if you're ready, you might lift your knee and with the help of your hand, placing the foot to the inside of your thigh. Good. And your knee will put out at an angle. It won't go all the way to the side. Perfectly fine. And as you stand in this position, you can keep your hands on the hips for balance. The left leg is still nice and strong. And you're trying to push your entire left leg into that right foot. You're trying to push the right foot back into the left leg. And that traction along the midline of your body will help maintain your balance. Your buttocks are squeezing. And then if you feel balanced and stable, you might like to take your hands to your heart. And if you still feel balanced and stable, you might like to grow some branches. Taking your arms up. This makes it a little bit more difficult. And then gently bring your hands all the way back down through center. Hands to your hips. Take your knee up to your chest and bring the foot to the floor. We'll just flush that one out with half a salute, just floating the hands up. Knees soft, spine curls, hips bend, fingers to floor, head to knee. Fingers on the floor, heart forward, gazing forward. Then curling in. Soften the knees, firm your buttocks, rolling back up. Reach up, and bring your hands to your hips. So now we move on to the second side. Coming up onto the left tiptoes. Remember, this right leg needs to stay super strong, especially the outside of the leg and the outside of the hip. Turn your left knee to the side. Squeeze your buttocks to help stabilize the pelvis. Hands on the hips helps to stabilize the pelvis. And you might stay here. Your knee pointing off to an angle. And then you might slowly bring the foot to the inside of the shin. And noticing it's below the knee or above the ankle. It's not resting on one of those joints. And then if you still feel balanced and stable here, you can take your foot to the inside of your thigh. This is now above the knee, so we still don't want to rest on a joint and put unnecessary sideways pressure on the joint. Left buttocks, outer hip, right buttocks, right outer hip, right leg nice and strong, and pushing into the left foot, and the left foot pushes right back. So you've got that nice traction, which helps to make you feel a little bit more stable, so you can take your hands to your heart. And you might feel so stable that you can grow your branches, nice and tall, feeling all the muscles of your leg engaging, really good for helping to build stability around your ankle joints. And then you're going to bring your hands back down through the midline to your hips, taking your knee up to your chest and floating the foot down. Good. And we'll move on. Saluting the sun, sweeping up and curling down. Fingers to floor, head to knee. Heart forward, eyes forward. Hands flat, downward facing dog. And lifting your heels high, bending your knees low, rolling forward, feeling your buttocks squeeze and propel you forward. Knees to the mat, sit back onto your heels, puppy stretch. And squeezing your buttocks, your spine rolls, lift up, move forward and down to your belly. Pointing your toes. Engage your legs, your buttocks, lift your hands, your elbows, your shoulders, your rib cage, your head. And lower down. And then pushing up to the tabletop and sit back onto your heels with the toes tucked under. And then rolling up to all fours. Adjust your wrists underneath your shoulders and your knees underneath your hips, pointing the toes. So we're coming into a balance. So from here, stretching your right leg out behind you without dropping your belly. So keep the side ribs lifting up. So as if you want to lift your waistline up towards the sky. The right toes are pointing down, the right knee is pointing down. And this might already be enough. Or you can extend your opposite arm out in front, the left arm out in front. Again, you might notice those little tiny wobbles as all the muscles in your body are trying to help balance you out. And then bring your hand to the floor, knee back to the mat. Tucking the toes and taking yourself to your downward facing dog. Now we're going to add a little bit of height to that balance. Step your left foot 2/3 of the way forward, the right heel to the mat. We're going to roll up along the spine to our warrior one. Now, really important, we want our hips parallel to the front, just like when we were in our kneeling or in our tabletop all fours position. And then bringing your hands to your heart. Keep pressing the hands together as you lean forward. Feel the weight shift into the front leg and then lift onto the back foot, or the ball of the back foot. And as you bring your hands to your heart, you might stay here and you might feel like this is already challenging enough. If you've got the wobbles, bring your hands to your hips. And maybe slowly squeezing into the right buttocks, lifting the back leg to hip height. The toes and the knees still pointing down, just like we were doing when we were doing this kneeling. Maybe your hands to your heart. Maybe one arm out in front. Maybe both arms out in front. This is much harder. You can still keep your hands in your prayer, or hands on your hips, or maybe hands out like airplane wings. And then bring your hands to the floor. Step back to your downward facing dog. Well done. We'll flush it out with a flow. So lift your heels, bend your knees, roll forward, high plank. Bring your knees to the floor. Now instead of sitting back onto our heels, we're going to squeeze our buttocks, shift the weight forward and down. Point your toes, squeeze your buttocks. Keep your hands on the floor, but lifting your elbows, lifting your rib cage, your chest, your shoulders, your head, and then lower back down. Push up. Tuck the toes, sit back onto your heels this time. And then coming to all fours. So now we'll balance on the second side. Adjust your hands if you need to. And this time we start with the left leg going straight back. The right toes can be tucked under or pointed, depending which helps you balance the best. And maybe you stay here, keeping the side ribs and the waistline lifting up. Maybe you extend the right opposite arm, the right arm. The back toes, the back knee pointing down. You can either have the foot flexed or flointed, which is a mix of pointing the toes, but pointing the ankle and flexing the toes. Bring your hand back to the mat, knees back to the mat, downward facing dog. So this is the part where we add height. The right foot steps 2/3 of the way forward, back heel to the mat, roll up, warrior one. Good, hands to heart. Palms pressing solidly together, your buttocks helping to press the feet solidly into the floor. Lean forward, the weight shifts into the front leg. Hands to heart, lift the back heel, a lot more weight into the front leg. Maybe you stay here, or maybe begin to lift the back leg. And you can keep your hands in prayer, or hands on your hips. Or maybe opposite arm extend down front. Maybe both arms. Maybe your airplane wings. And then the hands to the floor. Step back to your downward facing dog. And then just pedal out your feet a little. Bending, alternating knees. Maybe you wag your tail. And then coming back to stillness. Lifting your heels up high, bending your knees down low. Walk or step to the top of the mat. Fingers on the floor, heart forward, gaze forward. Long spine. Curl in. Squeezing your buttocks, softening the knees, rolling up along the spine. Arms along your side. And now we're going to add a side-facing version of the balance. Floating all the way up. And curling all the way down. fingers to floor, head to knee. Heart forward, gaze forward, hands flat, downward facing dog. And coming down onto your knees. You might like to turn sideways. Good, hands to your hips. Extending your right leg out to the side. The left thigh is still perpendicular to the floor. You might like to bring the block in line with your left knee and bring your left hand onto the block. Either keep your right hand on the hip or extend it up towards the sky. And maybe you begin to lift the right leg. Maybe it lifts a little, maybe it lifts a lot. So you feel the entire outer edge of your hip, your leg, your buttocks working. And then bringing yourself back to kneeling. Block to the side, hands to the floor. Downward facing dog. So now we're going to add a little bit of height. Stepping your left foot towards the left hand. Bring the right foot a little closer, bring the heel to the floor. Bring your block out in front of the left foot, hand onto the block. Now keep pulling your left hip underneath, so your left buttocks is tucked underneath your body, the right hand on the hip. And then like we did with Warrior 3 just before, you might lift onto the back tiptoes. You might slowly, gently begin to lift that back leg up. Maybe keep the hand on the hip. Maybe extend the arm up towards the sky. And then slowly, gently bring the hand back to the hip. Stepping your foot back, finding a long lunge. Block to one side, downward facing dog. So we need to do this on the second side. We'll flush it out with a flow. So lift your heels up high, bend your knees down low. Shifting the weight forward to your high plank, knees to the floor. Squeezing the buttocks, lean forward and down to your bellies. Toes point, hands down but elbows lift. Shoulder blades squeeze together. Buttocks squeeze together and you lift your rib cage, your chest, your shoulders, your head. And lower back down. We push up to our tabletop. Tuck the toes, sit back onto the heels. And then come up to your high kneeling. Turn to the side once more. You're going to want the block outside the right knee this time. Taking your left leg out to the side, right thigh perpendicular, buttocks squeezing, pelvis pressing forward. And then we're bringing the right hand onto the block, or maybe you can make it to the floor, whichever is most comfortable. And stretch your left arm up. Keep squeezing into your buttocks. Press down into the right shin, the left foot, the right hand. The left ribs press up. The left hand reaches up. And then bring the hand back to your hip. Come back up to your kneeling. So we're going to start. Go on to the second version where we lift this back leg if it feels okay. Hand onto block. And then leaning onto your right knee, slowly lifting onto the left tiptoe. Maybe lifting the left leg. Maybe lifting the left arm. So it's strong on this top side of the leg, the outer edge of the leg. And then bring your knees together. The block once more to the top of the mat. Turn yourself around, downward facing dog. So this is the last round. We're adding a little bit of height. The right foot steps forward. Block in front of the right foot. Left heel to the mat. So we're pulling this right sit bone in and under. Strong buttocks, strong leg. Left hand onto the hip. And you might start by lifting onto the left tiptoes. And then maybe begin to lift the left leg. Hip height, stretching the left arm up if you feel like you've got your balance. Strong lifted leg. It's almost like the left foot is standing on a wall. And then bring your hands down, back to your long lunge. Block to one side, downward facing dog. One last flow. Lift the heels, bend the knees. Roll forward, high plank. Knees to the mat. Keep the weight shifting forward and down to your belly. Elbows lift, shoulder blades squeeze, rib cage lift, shoulders lift. Head last. And then roll down. Squeezing your buttocks, lift up. Tuck toes, down dog. And then lifting your heels up high, bending your knees down low. Walk or step to the top of the mat. Fingers on the floor. Heart forward, gaze forward, long spine. Curling in. 2 more times. Heart forward, gaze forward. Curling in, exhaling. Last time. Inhaling the heart forward, gaze forward, long spine. And exhaling, curls you in. Firming your buttocks, press your knees forward. Inhale, rolls you up along the spine. Reaching your hands up, maybe the palms touch, and arms come down along your side. Feeling stable with both feet, once more on the floor. Back in our mountain pose. And this might be where you finish your practice today. Otherwise, stay on your mat and join me for the next video.